You know that sound. That specific annoying buzzing of a phone on a wooden table. I'm in the nursery. Maybe 3 a.m., and the only light is that dim blue glow from the baby monitor. The baby finally fell asleep. 20 minutes Aga took forever. 3 different rocking positions, and that white noise machine that sounds like a jet engine, so I'm just standing there frozen. I can't even breathe too loud, because if the kid wakes up, I'm done for the night. On my screen, I'm scrolling through the Ring footage from 2 a.m. the night before, and there's Mark. He's sliding out the side door, holding a leather messenger bag, looking over his shoulder, like he's trying not to be seen. Then there's the other phone, the second one. I found it tucked in the lining of his old golf bag a few days ago when I was looking for a glove. It's sitting on the dresser right next to me, and it's just bzzz, bzzz, constant. It's on silent, but it's vibrating so hard it's practically moving across the wood. I look at the video, then at the phone. I mean, who is texting a guy at 2 a.m.? Who calls a dad of 3 in a quiet neighborhood at 2 in the morning? Anyway, I spent the next few hours in that kind of panic. Eventually, I sneak out to the mudroom and I see his golf shoes. Again. Just tossed right in the middle of the floor. I picked them up and put them on the rack for the 100th time this month. I stood there for a minute holding them, looking at the mud. He tracked in, and I started shaking. The next morning was a blur. I was in the kitchen trying to match Tupperware lids in the drawer. Just standing there, trying to find the blue lid for the square container, and my phone pings. It's the team chat for soccer. Brenda texts, "Are we all set for the Atlanta tournament? I've booked the Airbnb, just need everyone to Venmo me their share by Friday." I stared at it. I'm thinking about the Ring footage, then I look out the window. The sprinkler system is leaking again. There's this huge muddy swamp forming right in the middle of the front lawn. It looks gross. And the HOA sent me another email yesterday. Another warning about the driveway. They want it power washed because of some mildew buildup near the garage. Seriously, who even cares about mildew? Some in my pajamas, looking at a swamp, thinking about a secret phone. And I have to deal with the soccer moms. I typed, "Sounds good, Brenda. I'll send it over today." And then I put the phone face down on the counter. Mark comes downstairs around 7 my point. He's acting totally normal. Like weirdly normal. He kisses me on the cheeky, didn't really want him to, and asks if we have any more of those coffee pods. "Yeah, in the pantry," I said. "Cool," he says. "Hey, did you see the lawn? I think the sprinkler is acting up. I'll call the guy later." I looked at him. "You'll call him later?" "Yeah, why?" "Nothing," I said. "Just wondering." I didn't tell him about the footage or the phone. I watched him drink his coffee and talk about some bullshit regarding the firm. All while I'm thinking about the $3,000 I just paid for our teenagers Invisalign. Because Mark forgot to check if the insurance covered that specific brand. It's just how it goes. I do the Invisalign, the HOA, the soccer schedules, the Tupperware. He handles the big picture, which I guess includes sneaking out at 2 a.m. The next few days I felt like I was losing my mind. Pretending everything was fine. I had to go to the neighborhood brunch at Brenda's. I'm sitting there eating some dry quiche, and Brenda is giving me this look. You know the one? Like she's sorry for me, even though I haven't said a word. "Jig Amber, you look exhausted," Brenda said. "Is everything okay? You've got like huge bags under your eyes." I said. "Just the baby, you know how it is." "Of course," she said. "I mean, I heard from someone that Mark has been working some really late hours at the office. It must be so hard on you." I felt sick to my stomach. I heard from someone. That means people are talking. In a neighborhood where the biggest drama is usually someone painting their shutters the wrong shade of beige, Mark sneaking around is basically front page news. Sarah and the other moms were glancing at me, then at each other. Just this silent thing, like they were waiting for me to break. I smiled. "He's just working a lot," I said. "It's a busy season, right?" Brenda said. "Anyway, did you see the email about the block party?" I spent the rest of the brunch nodding and pretending to care about the block party. In my head, I was calculating how much a professional would charge to power wash the driveway, so the HOA would stop emailing me. I felt like I was vibrating. Finally, I couldn't do it. I didn't want to fight in the kitchen where the baby could hear, so I made an appointment. I didn't tell Mark, I just told him. I was going to a wellness spa day with Sarah. Sarah didn't actually know, but she's too polite to ask, and I drove to a family law office on the other side of town. The waiting room was one of those places that makes you feel like you're about to get sued or audited. The lawyer, Diane, seemed like she hadn't smiled in years. She sat me down in one of those stiff leather chairs and asked what I needed. I didn't have much. I had the ring footage on a thumb drive and a list of dates from the second phone. I wanted to know my options. I wasn't even sure I wanted a divorce. Yet I just wanted to know if I was crazy. Diane looked through everything. She didn't say anything for a long time. Just flipped through some papers and then looked up. "Mrs. Morgan," she said, "did you provide the account numbers for your joint savings?" Yes, I said. "Why?" She turned the screen around. There was a spreadsheet open. There were withdrawals, big ones. Thousands of dollars every month for the last 2 years. But it wasn't going to a mistress or some gambling site. "These payments," Diane said, pointing to the screen, "are going to a property management company in a town 3 hours from here." I stared at it. "A property management company like a condo?" Not a condo," Diane said. "A 4-bedroom residential home. And according to these records, there are monthly payments for utilities, a cleaning service, and childcare." I sat there. It was completely silent in the office. I looked at the line for childcare, and then the date it started 2 years, before we even had our baby. I reached into my bag, pulled out my phone, and saw a text from Mark. "Don't forget to pick up the dry cleaning on your way home. Love you." I didn't reply. I looked at Diane. "Can you find out who lives in the house?" I asked. Diane nodded and started typing. Diane didn't even look up from her computer. She just pointed at the screen and told me the house was in a trust, but some guy named Louis W. Alvarez was the property manager. He was the one signing off on the cleaning services and the nanny's payroll. I'd never heard of him. I asked Diane for a phone number, and she just gave it to me. Anyway, I'm sitting in my car in the parking lot and honestly shaking. My hands were all over the place. The AC was making this annoying clicking sound that was just making everything feel worse. I called the number. It rang a few times and this guy answers. He sounded way too smooth, like a car salesman. "Alvarez Property Management. This is Louis. How can I help you?" I tried to keep my voice flat because I didn't want to start sobbing. "Hi, Louis. I'm calling about the property on Maple Lane. The one Mark Morgan has." There was a pause. Just a second, but you could tell he was thinking. "And who is this?" "His wife," I said. He said. His tone changed immediately. He sounded sympathetic, but in that way that actually feels kind of condescending. "Mrs. Morgan, look, just the manager. Mr. Morgan is very specific about the privacy of that residence." "Privacy, Louis? I'm his wife. I pay for half of everything. I literally just paid $3,000 for my son's Invisalign. Why is my husband paying for a house and a nanny in another town?" Louis sighed. I could hear him leaning back in his chair. "Listen, I can't really get into this with you. Mr. Morgan handles these arrangements personally to avoid exactly this kind of stress. If you want, I can have him call you. He's actually very fond of you." "Fond of me?" I almost lost it. "Are you kidding me? I'm the one running our entire life while he's out there playing house 3 hours away." "Who is in that house, Louis?" "I can't tell you who's living there," he said, "but I will say this. It's a stable environment. It's a good thing for the kids. I'm sure you understand why stability for children is important." I just hung up. I couldn't deal with some stranger telling me about stability while he was helping my husband cheat. When I pulled into my driveway at home, the first thing I saw was that mildew streak running down the concrete by the garage. I just sat in the car and stared at it. The HOA is definitely going to find me again. They'll send some formal letter with a gold seal, and it'll be the only one on the block with a non-compliant driveway. Inside, the mudroom was a mess. Mark's golf shoes were right where I'd put them yesterday, but they were skewed, like he'd just kicked them off. I didn't even move them. I went into the kitchen and opened the Tupperware drawer. I spent maybe 5 minutes just trying to find the matching lid for one medium-sized plastic bowl. I stood there staring at a pile of mismatched plastic, and I started breathing really fast. My phone buzzed. It was the travel soccer group chat. "Brenda, reminder. Venmo for the Atlanta Airbnb is due by midnight. If you haven't sent it, please do so. Now I don't have to chase people down, thanks." I looked at the phone, then the Tupperware, then the shoes. I just typed sent and Venmo'd her the money. Because that's what I do. I pay the Airbnb. I pay the Invisalign. I deal with the mildew. I went into the bedroom and grabbed the second phone from the dresser. I'd been trying to crack the passcode for a few days, and I finally got in. I didn't find a mistress right away. I found a group chat. It didn't even have a name. Just a thread of messages. There were photos. Not even sexy ones, just normal stuff. A toddler in a high chair with spaghetti all over his face. A little girl, maybe 4, holding up a drawing of a cat. And then the texts. A woman named Alina replied, "Don't forget the nap mats for preschool tomorrow. Love you." I just sat there. I felt like my entire life was a joke, and there was a whole other version of my family happening 3 hours away. The next morning, I was in the front yard. The sprinkler was still leaking, and the grass was basically a muddy swamp. I was wearing my gardening clogs, trying to dig a little trench to lead the water away from the foundation, when my neighbor, Mrs. Gable, leaned over the fence. Mrs. Gable is 70. She basically spends 6 hours a day spying through her blinds. "Morning, Amber," she said in that weird sing-song voice. I saw Mark leaving early again. He seemed hurried. I stopped digging, hurried. "Oh, you know," she said, blinking slowly. "He's been doing those early morning trips a lot lately. My nephew works in the city and he mentioned seeing Mark's car near Oakhaven a few times. Such a lovely area. Oakhaven. Very quiet." I just looked at her. "In this neighborhood. Very quiet is basically code for I know your secret. Is that so?" I said. "Mm-hmm," she said. "Anyway, your driveway is looking a bit spotted. You might want to hit that with some bleach before the board meeting on Tuesday." She just smiled and walked back inside. I stood there in the mud with my trowel, feeling like everyone was watching me. I waited until Mark left for the office at 8 a.m. As soon as his car cleared the driveway, I went straight to his golf bag. I wasn't looking for a phone this time. I wanted receipts. I dumped the whole bag out on the mudroom floor. Tees, balls, a worn-out glove, old scorecards. Then tucked into a side pocket of the leather cover, I found a crumpled piece of thermal paper. It was a receipt from a Build-A-Beer in Oakhaven, dated 2 weeks ago. One custom teddy bear and a small denim jacket. I sat down on the floor, right next to his dirty golf shoes, and just held that receipt. I thought about the baby in the nursery upstairs, who had just fallen asleep. I thought about the dinosaur nuggets and the nap mats. Then my phone pinged, an email from the HOA. "Dear Mrs. Morgan, it has come to our attention that the mildew buildup on your driveway has persisted, despite our previous warning." I stared at the email. I didn't delete it or reply. I got up, went to the kitchen, and opened the Tupperware drawer again. I took every single lid and container, and just dumped them all onto the kitchen island, in one giant plastic heap. I stood there for a long time just looking at the mess. Then I called Diane. "I want to know everything about Alina," I said. I hung up and went to the garage to find the power washer. I was out in the driveway with this power washer, and honestly, the thing is so loud it just shakes your entire body. I was scrubbing mildew off the concrete in these long strips. Because if I didn't, the HOA was probably going to send me another one of those annoying notice of non-compliance letters. I seriously cannot deal with them right now. I could see Mrs. Gable watching me from behind her curtains too. I just know she was. Anyway, I kept thinking about that receipt for the custom stuffed animal, the bear, and the little denim jacket for a kid I've never even met. Every time I hit the concrete with the water, I was just thinking about how I wanted Marker, whatever his name actually is, out of my life. Then my phone pings. It's the soccer group chat. Brenda is going on about how the rental in Atlanta has a strict knock-it policy, and asking if Sarah saw the email about the jersey sizes. I honestly didn't even know how to react. Im's standing there in a cloud of mist and dirt. My arms are vibrating, and Im's supposed to care about soccer jerseys. I typed "got it" and shoved the phone back in my pocket. I didn't even check if Sarah answered. I just wanted the noise to stop. Once I finished the driveway, I had to coil the hose, which took forever, because it kept kinking. Then I drove back to Diane's office. I didn't tell Mark I was leaving. He said he was at the office, which we know is a lie. He was probably at that other house, the one with the nap mats and that property manager. Lewis, when I walked in, Diane was already there with some files open. She didn't even look up at first, just stared at a paper. "Sit down, Amber," she said. I sat. The chair made this loud, squeaky noise. I felt kind of shaky again, but not from the power washer. She did some digging into the trust that owns the Oakhaven house. She also looked into Mark's legal records, not the stuff he gave us for taxes, but the actual state filings, and, I asked. She pushed a piece of paper over. It was a copy of our marriage license, but there was a red stamp across it. She told me it was a forgery. I was just staring at her. What do you mean? I was there. I wore the dress. We had the wedding at the vineyard. I have the photos, Diane. She told me the wedding happened, but the legal filing, the actual certificate sent to the county, was fake. It looked real, but it wasn't a legal document. According to the state of Georgia, we aren't actually married. I felt like the air just left my lungs. I forgot how to breathe for a second. I just stared at that red stamp. Why would he do this? I whispered. Diane flipped the page. She told me the man I've lived with for 15 years isn't even named Mark. He uses the name, obviously. But his legal identity, the one on the trust in the other house, is Michael Z. Poole. Michael Z. Poole, I said it in my head. It sounded like some guy who sells insurance or a lawyer in a commercial. Not the guy who leaves his golf shoes in the mudroom and forgets to take out the trash. He's not Mark, I asked. Legally, no, Diane said. She told me he's been using an alias for a long time. And the other woman, Alina? He's actually legally married to her. That's why the house is in a trust, to keep the assets hidden from anyone who might actually look. I stood up so fast the chair almost tipped. I felt dizzy, like I might actually throw up on her desk. He's married to her, I said. Then what have I been doing for 15 years? Diane's voice was really flat. She told me that from a legal standpoint, I've basically just been living with him. I'm not a spouse. I don't have rights to the marital assets because there is no marriage. I stood there for a minute. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall and someone coughing in the hallway. It felt cold in my chest. But the kids, I said, the baby, our teenager. Diane said there is biological children. So he's still responsible for child support. But the house, the savings, the joint accounts. If he's been moving money into a trust under Michael Z. Poole, it was going to be a nightmare to get any of it. I didn't really hear the rest. I just walked out. I didn't even say goodbye. I got into my car and just sat there, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles were white. I started thinking about the thousands I spent on my teeth. I thought about how I spent a decade managing every little thing, the HOA, the school forms, the dentist, the Tupperware, while he was playing this game. He didn't just cheat. He built a fake life and let me live in it, pretending I was the wife while the real version of him belonged to someone else. I don't even remember the drive home. I just remember pulling in and seeing that the power washing had actually worked. The concrete looked white, clean, like a perfect suburban home. I went straight to the mudroom. His golf shoes were right there, just kicked off. I looked at them and felt nauseous. I kicked them. I kicked them as hard as I could, and one of them flew into the wall. In the kitchen, the Tupperware lids were still all over the island. I hadn't cleaned them up. I stood there for a minute looking at the mess. My phone buzzed. A text from Mark or Michael. Picking up some Thai food for dinner. Do you want the pad thai or the green curry? Love you. I looked at the love you part. It felt like a foreign language. I didn't reply. I just walked over to the island and swept all the Tupperware lids onto the floor with one arm. They just clattered everywhere. I went upstairs to the nursery. The baby was awake and babbling. I picked him up and held him, and I just started shaking. I kept thinking about that other house, the one with the preschooler. I wondered if Michael Z. Poole told Alina. He was at the office when he was actually with me. I wondered if she even knew I existed, or if I was just some arrangement in his other life. Around 6 p.m. I heard the garage door. I walked downstairs. I didn't clean up the lids. I didn't move the shoe. I just stood in the kitchen, holding the baby, and watched him walk in. He was smiling. He had 2 brown paper bags of Thai food. He looked so normal, like the guy I've known for 15 years. Hey, he said, and he tried to kiss my cheek. I flinched. I actually flinched. Whoa, you okay? You look pale. I'm fine, I said. My voice sounded thin, like it was coming from someone else. Anyway, I got the pad thai for you, he said, setting the bags on the counter. The place was packed. I had to wait like 20 minutes. I looked at him. I looked at his face. Who is Michael Z. Poole? I asked. His face changed instantly. It wasn't a slow thing. The smile just vanished. His eyes went flat. He didn't move. He didn't blink. Where did you hear that name? He asked. His voice was different. Not the dad voice. It was clipped and authoritative. I'd never heard him sound like that, Diane told me, I said. About the forgery, the trust, Alina. He didn't deny it. He didn't try to explain. He just stood there looking at me like I was a problem he had to solve. Amber, he said, let's just put the baby down and talk about this. Talk about it? I started to laugh, but it sounded more like I was choking. You've been married to someone else for 15 years, your name isn't even Mark. Our marriage certificate is scrap paper. What is there to talk about? Look, I did what I had to do, he said. I provided everything for you. This house, the cars, the schools, you've had a great life. Why are you making this such a huge deal over a piece of paper? Because I'm not your wife, I yelled. I'm just what a hobby, he sighed. He actually sighed like I was being unreasonable. Look, I don't want this to be messy, he said. But you have to understand that the way things are set up, legally you don't have much leverage. I've handled everything. I felt the room tilt. He was standing in my kitchen in the house. I managed, telling me he'd handled everything while he lied to me every morning for 15 years. Get out, I said. Amber, be reasonable. Get out of this house right now. The house is in a trust, Amber, he said calmly. Technically, I'm the one who controls it. I looked at the Thai food. The smell of peanut sauce was filling the room, and it made me want to puke. I looked at the golf shoe against the wall. I didn't say anything. I just grabbed the bag of pad thai and dumped the whole thing on the floor. It was a complete mess. He just stared at the food. Get out, I said again. He didn't move. He just kept looking at me with those flat eyes. I walked over to the Tupperware drawer and pulled the handle so hard the whole thing came out, spilling 100 more lids across the floor. I stood there for a minute in the middle of the mess. The baby started crying. Mark Mickle didn't move. He just watched the food on the floor. He didn't even try to help me with the baby. He just stood there, looking at the pad thai sliding across the hardwood floor. He actually looked annoyed. Not sad or guilty, just annoyed that there was a mess in his kitchen. Clean that up, Amber, he said. I just stared at him. I was still holding the baby, and my arms were shaking so bad. The baby started screaming. I asked him if he was seriously telling me to clean up the food he bought to celebrate his double life. And then I told him to get out. I told you the house is in a trust, he said. He finally looked at me, but his eyes were just blank. I'm not going anywhere. If anything, you're the one who needs to figure out where you're going. Look, I'll give you money for the kids, obviously. But this little tantrum isn't going to change the legal side of things. I didn't even answer. I just walked past him into the living room and sat on the sofa with the baby. I didn't even cry. I just sat there and listened to him go back into the kitchen. I could hear him moving the takeout bags and pushing them into a pile by the baseboards instead of actually cleaning them up some. The next morning, I woke up at 5 p.m. My colleague couldn't even call him Mark in my head anymore, was already gone. There was a note on the counter. It wasn't an apology, it was just a list of dates. He said he'd be staying at a hotel for a few days to let things cool down, but that he'd be back on Thursday to discuss the transition. Transition, like he was merging two companies. I spent the next few hours in a total haze. At one point I realized I'd left a load of laundry in the washer since yesterday, but I couldn't bring myself to care. I went into the mudroom and grabbed a heavy-duty trash bag. I didn't pack my things, I packed his. Every single golf shirt, those expensive slacks, the stupid shoes. I shoved them all into bags and dragged them out to the garage. As I was hauling the third bag out, I saw Mrs. Gable. She was standing on her porch in a robe, holding a mug of tea. She wasn't even pretending to garden this time. She was just watching me. Morning, Amber, she called out. Everything all right? I saw a hotel valet car in the neighborhood last night. Very unusual for this street. I stopped. I was sweating. My hair was a mess, and I was holding a bag of laundry that smelled like a country club. He's gone, Mrs. Gable, I said. She blinked. Oh, my goodness. I had a feeling, I told my sister, I said. That man's driving is far too erratic for a stable marriage. Is that so anyway? She said, her voice getting all sing-singy. I hope you're doing okay. We're all very concerned. I'll tell the ladies at the book club to keep you in their thoughts. I just walked back into the garage and shut the door. I knew exactly what telling the ladies meant. By noon, every single person on the block would know the perfect Morgan family had collapsed. My phone started blowing up around 10. It was the soccer group chat. Brenda. Amber, honey, we just heard the news. We are all heartbroken for you. Please know we are here for whatever you need. Then, literally 2 seconds later, Brenda. Also, just checking, did you ever find the link for the jersey sizes? Sarah says her son needs a medium but the website is glitching. Let us know. I stared at the screen. I actually felt a physical pain in my chest. The love and light stuff was just so she could feel good about herself, while still expecting me to do the admin work for the team. I didn't reply. I just muted the chat. I spent the rest of the day on the phone with Diane. She was very blunt. She told me that because the marriage was basically a forgery, I didn't have the usual protections of a spouse in a divorce. But there was a way around it. He's an idiot, Amber, Diane told me. He's been using your name on several joint accounts for the kids' expenses. And while the house is in a trust, he messed up the taxes so badly over the last 15 years that it looks like a joint effort on paper. He wanted the convenience of a wife to handle the social side of things, but he didn't want the legal liability. In doing so, he created a huge paper trail of fraud. What does that mean for me? I asked. It means we don't just ask for a divorce, Diane said. We sue for fraud and common law recognition, or we lean on him with the tax evasion. If the heirs finds out been lying about his identity and his assets for over a decade, he's not just losing a house, he's potentially looking at prison. I sat in my kitchen, looking at the spot where the pad thai had been. I felt a weird cold sensation in my stomach. It wasn't fear, it was something else. Do it, I said. Do whatever you have to do. The next few weeks were a special kind of hell. I stayed in the house, but Michael didn't come back. He sent emails and professional messages through his lawyer, talking about equitable distributions and amicable separations. He tried to act like he was being generous by offering me a lump sum of money to just disappear and keep things quiet. Meanwhile, the neighborhood was a circus. I couldn't even go to the mailbox without someone giving me a sympathetic look. I went to the grocery store on Tuesday and ran into Sarah from the soccer team in the produce aisle. Amber, oh my God, she said, reaching out to touch my arm. I stepped back. I can't believe it. I mean, we all suspected Mark was a workaholic, but this, a whole other family? It's so brave of you to stay in the house. I don't know if I could do it. I'd be so embarrassed. Embarrassed, I repeated. Well, you know what I mean, she said, laughing nervously. Anyway, are you still coming to the Atlanta trip? Because if you are, we might need to redo the room assignments. It might be awkward if you're in the same room as the other moms while you're, going through this. I looked at her. I looked at her perfectly manicured nails and her leggings. I felt like I was vibrating. I'm not coming to Atlanta, Sarah, I said. Oh well, okay. I'll just let Brenda know. Hang in there, honey. I watched her walk away and just stood there for a minute. I felt like I didn't even matter anymore. I was just the woman whose husband had a secret family now. I wasn't the one who organized the carpools or paid the Invisalign bills. I was just a story for the neighborhood gossip. I went home and found that the sprinkler system was leaking again. The front yard was a swamp. There was a huge, muddy hole starting to form near the bushes. I stood there for a minute and watched the water spray haphazardly into the air, turning the expensive sod into a bog. I didn't call a repairman. I didn't try to fix it. I just let it leak. I spent the afternoon in the attic, looking for any other documents he might have hidden. I found a locked metal box and it took me an hour to pry it open with a screwdriver. Inside weren't more secrets, no more other families, no more aliases. It was just records. He had folders on me. There were printouts of my bank statements from 10 years ago, notes on my spending, a list of the people I talked to most. It looked like a dossier. He hadn't just been lying. He'd been monitoring me. He'd been managing me like an employee. I remember sitting on the dusty attic floor, surrounded by old Christmas decorations and broken toys, and I just started to laugh. I laughed until I couldn't breathe. All those years I thought I was the one holding it all together, and he was just auditing me. I took the box downstairs. I didn't give it to Diane. I just walked out to the garage, opened the big black trash bag with his golf clothes, and dumped the box right on top of his sweaters. 2 days later, I got a call from Louis, the property manager. Mrs. Morgan, he said in that smooth salesman voice. Mr. Morgan has asked me to contact you. He's concerned about the state of the property. He's received a report from the HOA about the front lawn. He says it's becoming an eyesore. He'd like you to have the sprinklers fixed immediately. I looked out the window. The yard was basically a lake. I could see Mrs. Gable on her porch, staring at the mud. "Tell him it's fine, Lewis," I said. "He's very insistent, Amber. He doesn't want the property value to drop." "I don't care about the property value," I said. "And tell him to stop calling you. He doesn't have a property manager anymore." "Sorry, suing him for fraud, Lewis. And I've already sent the ears a tip about the trust. If I were you, I'd check your own contracts to see if you're complicit in his arrangements, because I'm sure they'd love to hear how you helped him hide assets." There was a long silence. I could hear Lewis breathing ill. "I'll let him know," he said, and he hung up. The final break happened on a Thursday. That was the day Michael decided to come back to discuss the transition. I was in the kitchen. I had cleaned up the pad thai, but the Tupperware lids were still in a pile on the counter. He walked in through the garage. He looked the same polo shirt, same expensive watch, same calm expression. He didn't look like a man whose life was about to implode. "Amber," he said, "I think we can reach an agreement. My lawyer has drafted a settlement. It's more than fair. You'll be able to maintain the lifestyle you're used to for at least 5 years, provided you sign an INDA and leave by the end of the month." I didn't say a word. I just reached over to the counter and picked up a folder. "What's that?" he asked. "The evidence of your tax fraud," I said. "And the dossier I found in the attic." "It's funny, Michael. You spent so much time documenting my life. You forgot to make sure I had a bad lawyer." His face didn't change, but I saw his jaw tighten. "You're bluffing. You wouldn't blow up your own life just to spite me. Think about the kids. Think about the scandal." "The scandal already happened," I said. "Mrs. Gable already told the book club. Sarah from soccer already thinks I'm a tragedy. My life is already blown up. Now I'm just making sure you're coming down with me." He looked at me, and for the first time in 15 years, I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. It wasn't love or regret. It was just a realization that he had miscalculated. He had underestimated the person who had been doing his laundry and scheduling his kids' dentist appointments for a decade. "What do you want?" he asked. "The house," I said. "The trust, everything in that house in Oak Haven too. I want it all transferred into my name and the kids' names. Not a settlement, not a stipend, full ownership." "That's impossible," he said. "That's millions of dollars." "Then I guess the ERS is going to have a very interesting afternoon," I said. He stared at me for a long time. The house was quiet. The baby was napping upstairs, and the only sound was the distant thumping of the leaking sprinkler hitting the siding of the house. "You've changed," he said. "I haven't," I said. "I just stopped putting up with your crap." He didn't argue. He didn't yell. He just sighed and leaned against the counter. He looked tired. He looked like a man who had finally run out of aliases. "Fine," he said. "I'll have the paperwork drawn up. But you have to let me get my things." "The bags are in the garage," I said. "I already packed them for you, including the cashmere." He didn't say thank you. He just turned around and walked back toward the garage. I watched him leave. I watched the garage door slide shut with a heavy metallic thud. I stood there in the kitchen for a long time. I looked at the pile of Tupperware lids on the counter. I felt nothing. I didn't feel a victory. I just felt incredibly deeply exhausted. My phone buzzed. It was another text from the soccer group chat. "Brenda, okay. Since Amber can't make it, does anyone have a lead on a second SUV for the Atlanta trip? We're 1 car short now. Let me know." I looked at the phone. I looked at the empty house. I walked over to the counter, picked up the lids and put them back in the drawer. I did it slowly, just to have something to do. When I was finished, I closed the drawer. I went to the sink and turned on the faucet. I filled a glass of water and drank it. Then I went to the front door, opened it and walked out into the mud. I walked straight to the sprinkler valve and I twisted it. I twisted it until the pipe snapped with a loud wet pop. Water started geysering 6 feet into the air, flooding the driveway and soaking the front porch. I stood there for a minute and watched the water run. I went back inside and locked the door.